Do you want to know how to deal with passive-aggressive people? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. I'm Nicholeen Peck, and I teach all about parenting, communication, relationships, and everything I teach is through the lens of the principle of self-government. So we're going to be talking about passive-aggressiveness and what you can do to help them in this video. I've got 4 tips for you today for how to deal with passive-aggressive people, and they work. I should know I'm actually a passive-aggressive person myself. Well, let's say I was. Now I'm definitely an assertive person because I chose to be, and these 4 different tips that I'm going to share with you today will help you teach the person you love who has passive-aggressive tendencies to be assertive too. Before we get to these 4 tips, I just want to make sure that we are clear what assertiveness is, because that is our goal. So when a person is assertive, that means that they plan ahead of time how they want to communicate with another person. They say, how should I be in this situation? And then they also plan what words are going to help me communicate best with this person. What words are going to help me get my point across and understand them better as well. A person who is assertive does not just jump on their emotions. They recognize they're having an emotional response, and then they say, what do I want to do with this? So they stop themselves and they think first. That is very important. In fact, thinking and staying in that logical part of your brain a lot of the time is one of the things that helps a person truly self-govern themselves. So what is self-government? I'm known all over the world for being the self-government lady, and self-government is being able to determine the cause and effect of any given situation and possessing a knowledge of your own behaviors so that you can control them, which means that you analyze yourself and you make plans for the best ways for you to succeed. This is something that I teach people how to teach their children, and we're going to be applying some of those principles today. Tip number 1 is to pre-plan if possible. Now, I know that the passive-aggressive people in your life may not always be people that are under your stewardship. But if they're your children or a spouse or a close friend or family member, then sometimes you can communicate honestly with them and you can help them make a plan for communication. Now, this pre-planned step is actually the most powerful tip that I'm going to give you, because when a person plans ahead of time how they want to communicate and how they want to connect and how they want to behave, that person is empowered to do the right thing in the minute and to follow through with their plan. But if they never make a plan, then it's really hard for them to change once they get going. Once a person starts down a course, they feel invested to keep going in that direction. Especially if they're in the emotional part of the brain, they don't want to admit that they've done anything wrong. So they just keep going, even if it's the wrong track. But if you've analyzed ahead of time, maybe what their weaknesses tend to be with communication and how they fall into these traps or wrong paths that don't lead them to happiness and places that they want to be, then you can also discuss with them ways that they could communicate in more effective ways. Now, there is a skill that I teach parents to teach children, but this is not just for children. In fact, this is an adult skill for life. This skill is called disagreeing appropriately. So part of pre-planning is learning a skill that's going to help you to communicate properly in the minute. Now, I don't have time to teach everything about that skill right now, but there is a lot of information about disagreeing appropriately at teachingselfgovernment.com. So you definitely could go there to learn more about that skill. But I'll just explain a couple of pieces about disagreeing appropriately right now. Number 1 thing, when a person chooses to disagree appropriately, they are deliberately deciding to remain calm. A calm face, voice, and body. Number 2, the principle behind this skill is seek to understand, then to be understood. So the person always takes time to explain the other person's point of view before they share their own point of view. Now, if a person who has a tendency to be passive aggressive learns this skill, that can actually talk them out and walk them out of that passive aggressiveness that might be building in their mind just because they're focusing on the steps to that skill. And there actually are 7 steps to that skill, disagreeing appropriately, but I've just shared a little bit of the gist of a couple of those steps right now so that you get an idea of how powerful learning a skill like that could be. So pre-planning is super important. Prepare if you can ahead of time. Now, if you don't have the type of relationship with a person where you can do the pre-planning, then the best thing you can do is you prepare, you pre-plan for how you're going to handle the situation so that you don't fall into a power struggle and start communicating in passive aggressive or aggressive ways yourself. Tip number 2 is to be calm. Now, I know everybody says that, like, oh, well, just be calm, focus on calmness, learn about calmness. But what I've found over the years is that people want calm, but in the minute to try to have it and to be calm is a whole other beast. You can know that maybe it exists, but if you've never used it right in that time where you're going to fall into passive aggressive or aggressive type behavior, you're not really sure that it's possible. Calmness is vital for a person to actually have self-mastery or self-government. You can't govern yourself when you are in an emotional state. That doesn't mean your emotions aren't there or that we should somehow close them off and bottle them up. That's not the case. They are there, but we need to know how to handle them and what type of action steps to take to keep ourselves in our front brain so that we can really solve our problems, even if there does happen to be some sort of emotional response. Many people who are passive aggressive feed their emotions, and so they don't choose calmness, even though they look calm sometimes on the outside. You have to remember that with other people, just because they're not screaming does not mean they're calm. In fact, you can feel when a person isn't calm. There's a wall. There's a type of an agitation. The tone in the room adjusts. And it's because their heart is not calm. Their heart is engaging in selfish thoughts, in divisive thoughts. They're possibly judging you or somebody else around you because they're in an emotional place in their brain. This can happen to anybody. So what do you do to help that person get calm? Now, if you have the opportunity to pre-plan calmness with them and create a calm plan and a calm strategy with them ahead of time, all the better. But let's be real. Sometimes we're with someone we don't even know or we just work with at the office or something like that. And how do we help them become calm? Well, step number 1 is you be calm. Really calm. Not passive aggressive calm, but the kind of calm where you value the other person, where you say, they're having a hard minute right now. And I recognize that. I know they want me to understand something. And I'm willing to take that time. But I might need to give them a minute to get calm. So you're patient, you're understanding and caring through their process potentially of not being calm. Your calmness will show them that their power struggle is doing nothing. So what you could say is, I want to know what you have to say. I can tell that this is important to you. Can we get calm? Let's be calm. A person who's truly aggressive on the inside, even if they're passive aggressive on the outside, they might walk away. They might decide they don't want to do that. That can happen. But truly you can't solve the problem until they are calm. So hopefully with your children, you've talked about how to get calm, taking some calm, deep breaths, having maybe a calm place that they go to. In fact, in my course, the Teaching Self-Government Parenting course, I talk about 2 different ways that we help children get calm. So we have, for younger children, what we have is called the calm down spot. It's not like timeout. It's different, and it's a place that's a trigger spot for getting calm. And I talk about how to prepare the children to use this spot. When children are a little bit older, maybe age 6 or so and up, then I talk about using something called the rule of 3. And we modify it a little bit depending on age. But this rule of 3 is a process that we go through. It's a verbal process that helps them transition from the emotional part of their brain to the front part of their brain. So that if you can calm down some of those chemicals and stop firing them in mid or back brain, then the person will develop a calming and they'll be able to think more clearly. But usually you have to force engagement with the front in order to stop the production of the chemicals in the brain that are leading to all the emotional firing that's happening. We use this rule of three procedure. It's really just a skill, a parenting skill that we use to help our children choose calmness at those times when they're truly going out of control. One of the biggest things is parents absolutely have to step up and help their children be calm. Letting them just wallow and wallow just spins them down to a pit deeper and deeper, and then they don't get the opportunity to choose calmness or be understood fully. Before I get to my last two tips, are you liking this video? Give me a comment down below if you are, and for sure subscribe. Do you know I have videos that come out on this channel every day of the week? You won't want to miss some of those, so subscribe now. Tip number 3 is to describe. So you need to consistently help a person control that impulse to become passive aggressive, meaning bring them to calmness, bring them to assertiveness. And one of the ways that you do that is by assertively describing what's going on and what should be going on. So you might say to your child, right now, you are not looking at me and you are definitely not keeping a calm body because I can feel right now that there's a wall that's getting put up. You're not talking to me about this. So I can see you're not following instructions and you're not disagreeing appropriately. So those are 2 skills that I teach the children how to do, that I work with. These 2 skills are part of learning self-mastery. So I would be describing possibly some of the steps to those skills. And then I describe what they should be doing. What you should be doing is you should be looking at the person, keeping a calm face, voice, and body. Say okay or ask to disagree appropriately, and then do the task immediately and then check back. Those were the steps to following instructions. I might describe the steps to disagreeing appropriately. If I think they really need to talk to me, I need to understand what's happening here, but they need to do it in a way that helps them remember not to be passive aggressive. And that's where that disagree appropriately skill really comes in. It helps a person feel empowered as they are communicating with someone instead of feeling like they're being shut down, because they're choosing to use a skill that they already know, and it oftentimes works for them. Tip number 4 is to send the love. So if you truly are calm, then when you are talking to them, maybe you're even correcting them, because those describing phrases that I was talking about are part of doing a correction. So in a correction, we describe what happened, why it wasn't a good idea, what should have happened, and then we move on to consequences earned and some practice techniques that we use so that the person doesn't have the same problem in the future. During this whole interaction, I'm going to be looking them in the eyes and I'm going to be thinking, I love you. I love you, even when I'm correcting them, because they need that correction. They need that analysis or they won't choose to master themselves. Do you know that when you correct your children, that is one of the most loving and merciful things that you can do? You're teaching them a skill. You're teaching them it's okay to find a problem with themselves and fix it, that that's a healthy part of life. You're teaching them to analyze themselves and what's going on around them and to find better ways to handle their problems, so that they'll have productive relationships in the future. That's what the describing does, especially if it's done with love. When your children can feel closer to you during and after a correction, and you can feel close to them at the same time and not resent the fact that you have to do that correction, then that person has the opportunity to bond to you deeper than they even did before. But what about if the person's not a child? I think that's also important to talk about. Even if they're not a child, even if you can't fully correct them, you can just describe a few things, you can still send love to them. Even if they are the type of person that isn't being kind to you with their movements or their little snide remarks, whatever it happens to be, you can think, I love you. I understand nobody's perfect. You're definitely not being perfect right now. You have something you need to work on, I can tell that. But I can be patient. I can love you, even if I have to get away from you. Even if. Because maybe sometimes, even when the person's passive aggressive, you realize this isn't a good place for me to be. But you do not have to judge that person. If you do, it feeds it. In fact, a person that truly wants to power struggle with you in passive aggressive or aggressive ways really does not engage in many power struggles if they do not feel that it makes you hate them. Because in a weird way, that's actually what they're going for. If you've liked this video, I'm pretty sure you'll like the next one, which is how to discipline a strong-willed child. Click on that link and we'll see you there.